Hello and welcome to another Unity video. Today we are talking about using GitHub and GitKraken with Unity as a group to collaborate together on a project. So first we'll go over some examples about how you might be using Git and GitHub and GitKraken to collaborate, and then we'll talk about using branches to streamline some of that collaboration. Then I'm just gonna tell you straight up what buttons you should be clicking on in GitKraken every day to do stuff, and then I'll actually demo how to do that in GitKraken. So first, some Git collab examples. To review from last time, a repo or repository is a folder where Git tracks all the changes that are going on with your project. A commit is a snapshot of that repo at a given time. So you're constantly saving these snapshots, constantly saving these backup states as commits for your entire project. Then you push or pull these commits to and from GitHub. So just imagine you pushing, a commit to GitHub, which is called the remote, and then you're also pulling from the remote, from GitHub. You're downloading it towards your local, so that's downloading it. And for better or worse, most of the world uses Git, so sorry, that's just your life. Some examples of using this to collaborate. So, for example, let's say Alice is working on a project and she uploads her code tree.cs, and that's some code she wrote to make trees work in the game. Then there's also Bob, and Bob pushes his tree sprite. It's an image, tree.png. Bob is the artist on this game. And then there's a third person, Carol. Carol can just go ahead and pull or download the tree code from Alice and the tree art from Bob and then make a level with them. So that's an example of how Git can streamline all this stuff. Everyone can just push and pull their respective contributions, and then you combine it all yourself when you want to. Now, all this stuff can also go wrong, go horribly, horribly wrong, or actually not that wrong. So let's assume Alice was working on the tree art, not just writing the code. Here, she painted a new picture of a tree, and she pushed her version of tree.png to the repo. Then we also have Bob, who's also still working on the art, and Bob pushes his version of a tree.png. So Alice pushed a pine tree, but Bob pushed a palm tree. So there's two different types of trees, but it's the same file name. So now Carol's trying to work all this stuff out, and she's not really clear which version of the tree is she supposed to be able to pull or download. Is it Alice's version or is it Bob's version? Which version is the real canonical tree? And when all this stuff goes wrong, this is what's called a merge conflict in Git. A merge conflict is when Git literally does not know which version of a file to use. It can't merge these different people's changes. So it needs to ask you which version to use. Most of the time when you're working with code, Git can figure out how to merge your different contributions. So it's usually okay with merging code in any kind of text thing. But when you're editing the same line of code or just the same line of text, or if you're editing anything that isn't code or text, Git has some trouble trying to figure out how to work with those kinds of files. So this is called a merge conflict. Or you can imagine this much scarier scenario, or at least I think this is a scarier scenario. Let's say Alice is pushing some code for pinetree.cs, and then Bob is also pushing some code but Bob's code is kind of buggy, and it's for palm tree.cs. So there's no merge conflict, right? These are two different files, but Bob's code is kind of broken. And now Carol pulls from all their contributions and then finds that all the trees are suddenly broken in her version in Unity. And she doesn't really know why suddenly all the pine trees are broken, all the palm trees are broken. What happened? So how can Carol fix this? Well, first of all, Carol doesn't even know who broke everything. Was it Alice's code that broke things? Was it Bob's code that broke it? And once she does find out that it was Bob's code that breaks it, what then? Do you ask Bob to like fix everything? But Bob is also, kind of confrontational. You don't really, you don't want to like approach Bob, on the wrong day, because then it's just too much office drama and politics. So maybe Carol should just fix the bugs herself. But if she tries to fix it herself, is like Bob like possessive about the code and then doesn't want to share the code? Or maybe it's just easier for Carol to just revert everything and ignore that all that code happened. But sometimes it's not possible, because what if everyone's working on the assumption that Carol is working with the code? Or should Carol just quit her job and not deal with any of this? So this is a very, very scary scenario. And it's scary because GitHub didn't even know there's anything wrong. And also Unity doesn't even know that there's anything wrong. This is what's called a breaking change. This is when humans don't collaborate so well. When Git suggests that there's been a successful merge, but really you open it up and everything's actually broken because the computer itself can't detect that things are broken by itself. So these are breaking changes that are breaking it, but it wasn't detected. And these kinds of broken things are much worse than merge conflicts because now you don't even know what broke or why or where. So, in conclusion, though, merge conflicts and breaking changes will happen all the time. They're just a natural part of collaborating and development. You shouldn't be afraid of them and you shouldn't hate them. Instead, what you need to learn is how to expect them. You need to learn how to know about the merge conflict in advance so that you can deal with it in a productive way. Similarly, breaking changes are important. Sometimes you need to update your code base, and that's going to break previous code or break your levels or break your other characters or NPCs or AI. That's fine, but you need to know that it's going to break it so that you can prepare for it. So the most important thing about using Git and GitHub as a group is that you're all collaborating and communicating with each other. And also you keep situational awareness so that if you write some code and you think it might be breaking other people's stuff, you need to tell them. You need to warn them. You need to form a plan for how to deal with it. Right? It's not just your problem, it's everyone's problem. Everyone has to share in that responsibility. And one way to help manage that responsibility and help manage that complexity when doing all this stuff is to use branches. So let's talk about branches. Branching looks a little bit like this diagram right here. A branch is kind of like another parallel timeline of commits, an alternate universe where you're still writing code and submitting stuff, but you're not interfering with anyone else's work. So that's really nice when each person on the team can have their own branch and work on their stuff and commit and push with the confidence that your commits and pushes won't affect someone else's commits and pushes. So that's why branching is really nice. And then when you are ready, you choose when to merge your branches. So for instance, here you can see this cute little diagram. We start with a master branch over on this left side of the diagram. It's just a cute little octopus. And then maybe someone works on painting cute little heart glasses for the octopus, and then someone else draws a cool little cowboy hat for the octopus. And these are two separate features that people are working on, and you're not interfering with each other. And then when you are ready, drawing the cowboy hat, or when you are ready drawing those heart-shaped glasses, that's when you decide to merge and composite and combine and implement and integrate all of your different features together into your main or master branch. So some common ways to branch in Git. Git itself doesn't enforce any specific way other than naming your default branch main or master. Master is kind of the old school way of naming things, but lately there's a push to just simplify this terminology and avoid this weird master slave kind of dichotomy that's in software engineering. So instead, there's a push more towards just naming it main, which I think is fine. It's even fewer characters to type, I think. Main is usually the most important branch. It's the default one that gets initialized. And usually the main branch is expected to be stable and bug-free, and it's what most of the public users are meant to be using. But some common other ways people use branching are usually you might have a branch called develop. And develop is for developers to implement features together before actually releasing it to the public on the main branch. So develop is kind of semi-public, you know. If you're a developer or you're just like a hardcore nerd and you want like the bleeding edge alpha beta version of some software, you might check out the develop branch, but it might be kind of buggy, might be kind of broken, stuff like that. And then what's probably most common when you're working on stuff is to have feature branches. Feature branches are when you are working on a thing, so you branch out to work on that thing without messing up anyone else and disturbing anyone or annoying them. So, for example, if you're working on an art pass for your game, you might start an art pass branch and then do all your art pass stuff without bothering someone else. Or let's say you're adding a new monster, you might name your branch feature new monsters. And then people will know what's in that branch. And let's say they want to look at the monster code, they can just look at your branch and maybe even help you out on implementing the new monster code for your game. But what I'm going to recommend personally, if you're starting out with Git, is not to use too many feature branches, because then that introduces a lot of branching complexity. What I recommend for most teams starting out with Git is to just have a personal branch. And that's where you just name a branch Robert. Like my name's Robert, so I have a Robert branch. Or if I'm collaborating with Eddie, Eddie might have an Eddie branch. Or Sandra might have a Sandra branch, and so on. So each person can have their own branch, and that still clearly denotes like responsibility and what you might expect to find on there. And you know, the Robert branch has all of Robert's contributions to the project, right? So now a confusing scenario is now made slightly less terrible. So for instance, let's say Alice pushes her version of a tree, but she starts a branch called Pine Tree Branch. And then Bob could push his own version of the tree, and that could be called the Palm Tree Branch. So now, when Carol is pulling other people's work, she can decide actually, does she want the pine tree better, or does she want or maybe the palm tree would work better for her level, right? So that's what's really nice about having different branches. It allows you to pick and choose what you are merging into your work, so that other work doesn't get forcefully put into your branch. So for example, what if they were working all on the main branch? Then you have much less control over what gets put in the main branch, and you just have to accept stuff even if it's broken, and that's no good. So this is where branching is really, really helpful, right? It lets you choose when and what you are putting into the game and when. But with branching, there's still the potential for merge conflicts. And actually, there's an even greater potential for merge conflicts, because when you're branching out and then merging back in to the main master branch, you know, you might have been working on some stuff that someone else was working on. So if you look at this diagram here, you can see both on the master branch and the angry branch, both those branches change the face of the octopus. This isn't a case of the octopus hat or the octopus glasses. They're editing the same thing on this thing. So now we don't know which face to use. Are we using the angry face or the afraid face? Are we using the angry branch or the one that's on master branch? This is a merge conflict. Git does not magically know what your intentions are. It needs you and your team to have a very adult conversation about what the face of the octopus should be, and then choose. So when you have a merge conflict, there's three main strategies for resolving this. The first way is probably the easiest way, is in your Git tool, for example, in GitKraken or SourceTree, or most Git tools will have this feature where you can easily choose which version of the file you want. Do you want the one on the branch that you are currently on, or do you want the other one on the other branch? So you choose between my version of the copy of the file or their version of the file. And that's pretty much an easy way usually to resolve it. In GitKraken, you literally just do a checkbox for the thing you want. But sometimes you need a little bit more control. You need to massage it a little bit more. GitKraken has a built-in what's called a diff tool or a difference tool. Sometimes these are also called merge tools. These let you manage line by line and pick and choose which parts of each file you want to bring in. So it's often really nice to use a merge tool when you're trying to figure out this stuff. And then lastly, sometimes you don't even need a Git tool or a merge tool. Sometimes it's easiest to just do a manual merge, which is where if you're working with code, you just open up the code directly in your code editor, like VS Code, and then just write whatever you want it to be. And then afterwards, you tell your Git tool that you resolved it. And that's usually called mark as resolved. That's like saying, I handled it. Don't worry, GitKraken, I got this. But one really important note here, if you are not working on code stuff, do not open up Unity, and just don't open the Unity editor, because if you're in the middle of a merge conflict, Unity will open up the file and attempt to compile it or attempt to use it, but Git has inserted the merge conflict markers in the file. So it actually breaks every file when there's a merge conflict. And Unity will try to open it and will start just screaming and yelling at you, and it's not good. So do not open Unity while doing a merge conflict. Only open up your code editor if you want to do some code stuff. But otherwise, do not open Unity. It's just going to be bad news. So now let's move on to the third of our four-part lesson. Let's just talk about what are the buttons, and conceptually try to imagine what you are doing day to day when you are collaborating with GitKraken or any Git tool, really. So first of all, you'll need to start collaborating. So one person should start the repo, and then that repo owner or Git master needs to add everyone else as a collaborator in the repository settings. Then after that, you need to clone the repo. So after you're added as a collaborator, you need to go onto GitHub and copy the URL and then use your Git tool to clone it to your computer. So you have a full copy of it that's connected to GitHub. That's what cloning is. Don't just download it, make sure you clone it. And then once you clone it, immediately you should branch out from the main branch. Do not work directly on the main branch. Instead, start your own branch. And remember, I recommend just using personal branches. So my name's Robert, so I would use the Robert branch. I would name my branch Robert. And now if anyone has a problem with the code on my branch, they also know conveniently who to complain to. It's my fault. And then lastly, when you're working on personal branches, stay on your branch. Again, do not work on the main branch. Do not work on master. So that's just the setup thing, and that shouldn't take you very long. It should be, and you just do that one time per repo, and then you're set up for that project. Now, here's more what your day-to-day will look like. So the day-to-day, you usually have two different things you want to do. One is to get other people's work, and one is to share your work with other people. So first, to get other people's files, to get other people's work, first, you need to finish whatever you're currently working on. So you might be writing some code or working on a file or working on a level. Commit whatever you're working on and make that snapshot, make that backup. And the reason why you need to do this is because if you don't commit it, Git might block merging other people's work into your stuff because their merge might overwrite whatever you're working on. So this is actually for your own safety. Git is saying, yo, you forgot to commit. Make sure you commit. Otherwise, people might end up messing up your stuff. So make sure you commit your branch. Then you'll want to use a command called fetch. Some Git tools like GitKraken try to automatically fetch, but sometimes that also breaks down. There's always some kind of fetch override, fetch command somewhere. And fetch basically just refreshes what you're seeing. That's all fetch does. It refreshes, it talks to GitHub and refreshes whatever GitHub files are on there. Then you need to merge, and specifically you need to merge from GitHub, which we usually call the origin in our Git tools. You want to merge the main branch from GitHub into your branch, your local branch on your computer. And that's almost like pulling all the files over there and pulling them into your branch, except it's a different branch. It's not the same branch. That's why we need to use something called merging, not necessarily pulling. And then when you pull and merge, you might have to resolve some merge conflicts and make some decisions. Just watch out for that. And sometimes when you do that, you might also want to just test in Unity, make sure the merge is actually okay, make sure it didn't break anything. And then with most Git tools, you will have to finalize the merge by clicking on that commit button wherever it is in GitKraken or SourceTree. Make sure you click the commit and finish that merge. So just to review conceptually, what this whole process is you're saving whatever you're working on, then you're refreshing what's on GitHub, and then you're merging whatever's on the main branch into your branch. So that's conceptually what's happening here. But to share your work, it's a little bit more involved. So to share your work every day, like if someone else needs your files, here's how you do it. First, you need to repeat the steps from the previous slide. You need to make sure you got other people's work because you need to make sure you didn't break someone else's stuff. And one way to help you prevent yourself from breaking other people's stuff is to first get other people's work and make sure it works with your branch. Then once you've helped yourself, once you've fixed your own stuff, you can move on and now commit and push. Remember, pushing means uploading. Commit and push your branch up to GitHub. Then you need to go to GitHub and make what's called a pull request. A pull request is basically usually a request for the main branch to pull your branch. So remember, imagine you are GitHub. From your perspective as GitHub, you are pulling. What we are doing is pushing to GitHub looks like pulling, right? And you're asking, GitHub, can you pull my branch into the main branch? And so that's kind of conceptually what that merge is doing. And what's good about using a pull request is that it doesn't do it immediately. The pull request previews what's going to happen and lets your collaborators review and see what's actually going to happen. So they can warn you if stuff is going to break, or they can say, "Oh, I actually forgot that this was happening. Oops." So that pull request is really good because it forces you to see what is actually being put in your project. If you work professionally, it's a very common practice at a studio or some kind of like software company to have your boss approve your pull request or PR. So you might say, hey, can you review my PRs? And then your boss might say, LGTM looks good to me. Now, some people might say, this is too much work and we're not a company. So some people do the anarchy mode where you don't use pull requests, where instead you switch over to the main branch and you pretend you're GitHub and you merge your branch into the main branch yourself. And that's okay too, as long as you all really trust each other and you know each other and you're not going to mess stuff up. What's really good about the pull request is that it helps you all protect the project and helps you all safeguard each other. Anarchy mode, it's kind of more no holds barred. Like people are just going to put wherever, anything, wherever. And sometimes you might not like what happens. So, unless you're like pretty experienced with Git and you trust your collaborators, you should do the pull request is what I recommend. So that was a lot of stuff to throw at you. You might need to review those previous slides again and again as you go into stuff, but let's try to put all that stuff into practice in GitKraken. So let me zoom out over here. I'll try to keep these slides open so we can see what we were doing. Okay, so first, maybe it's a good idea to start with this slide where it's about starting our collaboration. So to start collaborating on GitHub, the repo owner needs to add you as a collaborator. So to do that in GitHub, just here's what your GitHub might look like. You need to go to the GitHub settings. So there's this little settings menu on your GitHub page. Then whoever owns this repo needs to click on Manage Access. And then over here, you'll see this big green button that says Invite a Collaborator. Click on Invite a Collaborator. And then you'll need people's GitHub usernames, And then once you do that, couldn't find my account name. You can search for it and invite them to collaborate on your repo. And once they collaborate, they'll have push and pull access and all that good stuff to your repo. So that's how you do step one. Go to the GitHub page, go to the settings, and type in the search box everyone's GitHub username. Next, we need to move on to cloning the repo from GitHub. So once you're added as a collaborator, or even before you're added as a collaborator, you need to clone the project. So to clone it, you need to click on this big green button right here that says code or clone, and then you need to copy the URL that's right here on GitHub. And I'll start with HTTPS, and that will end with .git over here. So that's the URL you need. So copy that URL. And then once you have that URL, you need to go over to GitKraken, click on clone a repo. It'll ask you, where do you want to clone it? I want to clone it to my desktop, I guess. It'll say the URL, paste the URL that started with HTTPS that you got and copied from GitHub. And then I'll ask you what path you want to clone it. Yeah, that stuff looks good. Click clone repository. And it'll say successfully cloned it. Click open now. Okay, so that was step 2. We just cloned that repo from GitHub onto our computer. Now we need to do step 3 of our setup. We need to branch out from that main branch. So the way that looks like here is I'm currently starting on the main branch. On GitKraken, all you do is click on this big button here that says branch. So I'm going to click on branch, and it's going to ask you to type in the branch name. I'm going to call this Robert branch. Press enter, and now you have a branch called Robert. Now notice something about how GitKraken is displaying all this stuff. GitKraken is displaying that both Robert and main are in the same exact place. They are all in the same commit, and that makes sense, right? So branches can also like collide and intersect in the same station, in the same commit. So yeah, imagine this like some kind of subway map, right? You can totally have two different subway lines converge in the same station, in the same commit. Okay, so that's step 3. Branching out is good. And now step 4, stay on your branch. To know what branch you are on in GitKraken, it's very simple. Just look in your sidebar and see that little checkbox right there. That means we're checked out. We've checked out the Robert branch right there. Or also, GitKraken even shows you a second place to know where your branch is, right here on this branch drop down up here. So for the most part, when you will probably want to mostly stay on your branch and not work directly on that main branch. Stay on your branch. Now let's move on to the next slide here. We wanted to be able to demo how to get other people's work. So for instance here, let's imagine our name isn't Robert. Let's imagine our name is actually Eddie. So I'm going to switch over to the Eddie branch and check that out. And now I'm Eddie. And now you'll see Eddie has a problem here. Eddie's branch diverged from out here. And Eddie's branch is right here. But Eddie needs the files that were in the commit over here. So do you see how there's no line connecting these two things? The way to read these timelines is it's kind of like a Facebook feed or like Twitter, right? It's older at the bottom and newer at the top. So as we start down from here and the branches converged, but then they split. And now Eddie's branch right here does not have this README edit right here. So let's first commit whatever we're working on. Let's pretend we were working on something here. I'm just going to go ahead and pretend I saved a new file here. So I'll make another copy of this README file, and I'll call this README Eddie. And now you'll see here in GitKraken says there's one new file that we need to commit. So let's go ahead and stage that file. Then we need to write a good commit message. Added new README file. Let's commit that because we are working on it, and we need to make sure our stage is clean completely before we can begin merging other people's stuff. So that's step 1 complete. We committed whatever we were working on. Step 2 is to fetch. Now, GitKraken usually does a good job of refreshing and fetching, but sometimes it doesn't do a good job. So it's good to get in the habit of fetching manually in GitKraken. To do that, go to your sidebar, click on this little menu here, and click Fetch Origin. Remember, Origin is our name that we traditionally use for GitHub. So what we're doing is fetch from GitHub, refresh whatever GitHub sees. So here I'm going to select Fetch Origin, and you'll see it briefly load and refresh. And now we can be assured that we absolutely have an up-to-date view of everything going on. So that was step 2. We went to fetch. Now step 3 is we need to merge the main branch into our branch. So to do that, we need to right-click on the thing that we want, which is right here, which is where the main branch is. Right-click on that, and you can say main, merge main into Eddie develop. Or you can even drag and drop it onto your branch in GitKraken. So here you can say, here's my main branch. I'm going to drag the main branch, drag, drop on Eddy develop, and it'll give me some options for that. Now you'll notice that there's two icons next to the main here, which is very important. There's a main that has a little icon, and then a main that has a laptop icon. The laptop icon refers to the local main on my local computer, my machine. You probably, sorry about the beeping. You probably do not want to merge from your version of main because it might be out of date. So you probably want to grab the most up-to-date version of main. And right now, my main has this weird icon. That icon is my GitHub icon. So that's why it shows up like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag main and drop it on my current local branch. And that will prompt GitKraken to offer me the option to merge main into Eddy develop. That's good. We don't want it the other way. We don't want to merge Eddy develop into main. That's the wrong way around. We want it this way. So now let's merge main so that we can get all the files in our branch, into our branch. When I do that though, you'll notice there's now this orange thing and all these warning icons. Merge conflicts detected. Oh no, we have merge conflicts. So now we need to move to step 4 of our process here. Let's resolve the merge conflicts. So to resolve the merge conflict, select it in GitKraken, and then it'll open up the stage here and show you what those conflicted files were. Now, here's what you should not do. You should not click mark resolved, because we actually did not resolve anything. If you click this mark resolved button, you are just pretending you fixed your problems, but actually your life is still a mess. You're just pretending your life is actually okay. So do not click that button, because if you click that button, you are just lying to yourself, okay? You need to actually fix the problems before you say they're resolved. So to actually resolve it, do not click that button. Instead, just click on the file name. And now GitKraken will open up this panel instead. And this panel is GitKraken's built-in diff tool. So now we can choose which version of this file do we want. Here on the Eddy develop branch, you can see the file, the code looks like this. And it has these files. But over here, the main branch has these files. So which version of the file do we want? Do we want the one on the left side, or do we want the one on the right side, which came from the main branch? A lot of the times you might say, oh no, I worked on this feature, it's really important, let's use my version of the file. But sometimes you might be like, wait, I don't remember editing this file, and I don't really care about what happens to it. So if you don't care what happens to that file, it's almost always safer to just accept whatever is on the other branch instead of what's on your branch. Because maybe Unity accidentally updated the file or something. So the safest thing, if you don't remember editing it and you don't care what happens to it, use the other version of the file. So now we checked that box. We've selected which version of the file to use. That's really good. Now to do that, click save and accept that. And now right here, you'll see it's moved from the conflicted file section up here to a staged file. And you'll see down here, the big green button down here, we have to finish the merge. This is one of the most important things you need to do with the merge. You need to finish it. You need to commit. If you don't commit, the merge never happened. So make sure you remember, click that green commit button, finish the merge. And now it'll appear right here. And now look at our subway map here. Now you can see that blue line and that turquoise line joined together. And that shows you that now Eddy develop has all the files from this previous point over here. So that was all our steps for getting other people's work. We committed whatever we were working on, we refreshed our view, and then we merged whatever was on the main branch into our branch. And then we finished the merge by committing it. Now let's move on to step 5. Let's share our work with everyone else's stuff. So let's pretend I was working on another file here. I was working on the Eddie file, right? So here, according to our subway map, according to our chart here, you can see that my computer, my local version, the version of this branch on my computer has all these files. But GitHub's version of my branch does not have these files. It's all the way back here. And worse yet, the master branch, the main branch, is also back here. It doesn't have any of these other files. So we just completed steps 1 through 4. We got other people's work and we resolved the merge conflicts. Now let's move on to step 2 here. Let's commit and push. So I committed everything, and now I'm going to click push to push and upload all my files up to GitHub. And now when I push, you'll see both of these icons are together on the Eddie develop branch. That's good. That means GitHub and my version on my computer are synchronized. We're in the same place. We're on the same commit. And now, step 3 of sharing our work, we need to go to GitHub and create a pull request. Now, GitKraken actually has a built-in pull request thing, which you can do if you want, but I'm going to show you the manual way, just so that you're not always reliant on GitKraken. So for the optimal features, it's best to go over to GitHub and open GitHub in your browser. And chances are GitHub will know that you recently pushed. You can see right here, right? Eddie developed had recent pushes, and it'll say, do you want to compare and do the pull request? But if in case it doesn't do that, you'll need to click on pull requests and do a new pull request, and it'll ask you, what do you want to compare? Click on your branch right here, and then that's another way of doing it. And now it's going to show you all the commits that you want to include in this pull request. So make sure you review all the stuff you want to do. And then click create pull request. And you need to write what is here. So added many new README files. Let me know if this looks okay. Does it break level 3? This is where you write important comments for other people to review so they understand what your commit and what your pull request is about. Then when you're done with it, click create pull request. And when you do that, now other people can go to the GitHub, your collaborators, your boss, your supervisor, your classmates, anyone, your teacher can now look at your pull request and review your code and see, okay, looks like, oh, what did you do here? Okay, looks like you did here, and then you deleted this and added this. Okay, yeah, I think that's okay, right? So this is where someone would review your contributions and make sure it looks okay. And now, here's what you should not do. If you made a pull request, you should never click the green merge pull request button, because that means you're bypassing all of these safeguards. That means you don't care about anyone else's opinion. That means you think you're so cool, you can just make and approve your own pull request. That's not cool. That is not allowed. So it's really important. You are not allowed to merge your own pull request. Instead, you need someone else. You need to ask someone else to look at your pull request. And when a good number of people have looked at your pull request, if you're working in a group of 4, at least like 2 or 3 people should look at your pull request. If that pull request looks good to you and you reviewed it, you might write looks good to me or LGTM and then click comment. And now when enough people write looks good to me, that's your sign that you can now merge the pull request. But of course, someone else should click that button. Now, the other good part about using pull requests is that if you wrote code and it's broken, it's not just your fault, it's now everyone's fault because they reviewed your code and said it was okay. So if you have anxiety about collaborating on stuff, pull requests are a great way of spreading out that anxiety and responsibility because now your boss approved your code and your boss merged it in and now your code broke everything. It's your boss's fault now because they said it was okay. So there's a lot of good reasons why you want to do pull requests, emotional, psychological, but also formal, and it's just good software design practice. But now I'm going to do the thing I told you not to do. Let's pretend someone else clicked this button that said merge pull request, confirm, merge. And now you can delete the branch, but if you're working with personal branches, you should not delete the branch. That would be kind of mean. And now if we go back here, and now if we refresh, we fetch our view. And now when we fetch our view, you'll see what's happened, right? You'll see the main branch on GitHub now has the pull request merge right there. And now other people can now merge main branch into their personal branch and get all that code, which is really nice. So let's assume my name's Robert and now I'm working on the Robert branch. Now I can drag the main branch into mine and say merge origin main into Robert. And now I have everyone's code. I have all the code that was on main. I have all the code that was on Eddie develop. Everything that got put on the main, I now have, which is really nice. So that's our lesson, right? We made sure our merge was going to be okay. We committed and pushed our branch, and then we made our pull request. Other people review our pull request, and then other people can now access our work from the main branch. And that's the basics of working as a group with GitHub and GitKraken, usually in Unity. Hope you learned something. Hope that was useful. If you need to refer to the slides or anything, the link to the slides is in the YouTube video description. So just go ahead and check that out. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out. Bye.